My name is Toni Pimble, and I originally came from England, Camberley, Surrey, which used to be the home of Elmhurst Ballet School, which is now the prep school for the Royal Birmingham Ballet. I moved to the US, to Eugene, Oregon in 1978, and I have been running the Eugene Ballet Company as artistic director and resident choreographer for the past 30-odd years. Mowgli came about because a very strong supporter of the Eugene Ballet Company, Richard Haugland, emailed me and said I would be interested in supporting the creation of a new work, which would be a children's ballet. And do you have a suggestion for what you would like to do for that? I presented a number of options to him, including Mowgli, the Jungle Book Ballet, and that's the one he went for. It started 3 years before we actually put the ballet on stage. It was very involved because it's a very complex ballet. There were many people involved in the creation of Mowgli, the Jungle Book Ballet, even before it got into the rehearsal studio. It was designed by Greg Crane, a set designer. He designed it. It was built in part in Portland, Oregon at Bill Burbach's Acme Studio Design, and also in Eugene at our production warehouse by Barry Rogers. The sets are, my idea was that it would not be oversimplified, that it would in fact have a sophistication level to it. So I would say that Mowgli, the Jungle Book Ballet, is a little bit like The Lion King meets Mowgli in the sense of the design of it. I didn't want the dancers to actually be dressed up as creatures. I wanted it to be a sophistication, and India is such an exotic place with such wonderful costuming, natural costuming from the people there, that I wanted to use that as an element in the design of the sets and the costumes. I'm a big fan of the artist Hundertwasser, and a German artist, and so I wanted to incorporate that kind of cubist-like feel to the sets. I didn't want them to be real, and Greg came through for me in spades in that regard. He just did a beautiful job understanding that it wasn't supposed to be realistic in any way. It was supposed to be artistic. I don't believe in speaking down to children. I believe that if you create something wonderful, even if they don't understand it, they will rise to the level and they will accept it. So in that respect, I feel that the piece was well conceived, and I had great people to work with. He also designed the 2 large puppets. I did want to work with large puppets. So Shere Khan the tiger and Kaa the snake are the 2 puppets. I just didn't see how I could create that just with dancers alone. Whereas Baloo and Bagheera, I felt definitely dancers could take that on. The puppets were created in part in Portland, Oregon, with Acme Scene Shop building the very large heads. And then they were also covered in Eugene. Caroline Barnes is a wonderful artist that I've worked with in the past in Eugene. She created all the coverings, the colors, and the textures for Shere Khan. And then Dana Hansler is also an artist in Eugene, and she worked on Kaa the snake. Kaa the snake was a really big challenge because it's a 50-foot long puppet. It's built in 6-foot increments. So she had Kaa the snake all over her house everywhere. And it's built with 1 piece of fabric, but in 6-foot increments, and on that fabric becomes a secondary design of further fabric that creates the wonderful patterns that you see in so many snakes. We wanted to imitate that. What we did know about the production from the get-go, and my costumer, Jonna Hayden, who did the costumes for it, definitely had great ideas about India and the exoticism, and she kept saying, we have to bring bling, lots of bling to this production. So there are jewels on everything. We did a lot of sequins for the designs of the puppets, especially Car, because the scenes in which Car appears in the show are nighttime scenes. And so we really wanted him to glitter and be fantastic, and he really is. For the costumes, John Hayden and I went to Vancouver, BC. There's a big Indian population there, and they have some wonderful stores there where they sell saris and beautiful fabrics, and for really reasonable prices, because of course we always have to consider that when we're building a production of this magnitude. She bought quite a few beautiful saris that already were very decorated on the edges, and then she brought them back to Eugene and cut them up, which I couldn't even bear to watch. But she had a very specific idea for some of the costumes on how she wanted to work with them. And here we had ready-made trims already on the costumes. So she was very clever in the way that she used fabrics for Mowgli. The music is so important to a ballet because as a choreographer you have to be inspired or moved by the music. I knew that I didn't see it as working with classical music or even very contemporary music in a way. I wanted that Indian flavor. This is the story about a little boy, Mowgli, who is an Indian boy, and it's set in the Indian jungle. I always spend a lot of time on the internet looking for music, and I found an Indian sitarist, Baluji Srivastava, who lives in London. He's a sitar player, and he works with an Irish flautist, an American singer, jazz singer, and an Egyptian percussionist from Cairo. They do a lot of work that is part based on classical Indian, but it then moves beyond that into part Indian, part jazz, because of course much of Indian music is also improvised, so it works very well. What that did was it makes what otherwise might be for Western ears challenging music, Indian classical music, it made it much more accessible. He had put together two CDs, which I mainly drew from, and they were just wonderful. They just spoke to me, and I kept finding more and more of the music that really worked to help tell the story. I created my own soundscape. I have my own computer with SoundForge, and I can buy sound effects, jungle sounds. So I created my own sound effects, which I sometimes used to connect scenes and sometimes used to start out a scene, but then gently took those sound effects out as the music progressed. It took me one whole summer of constantly working on it. And I must say I love doing it. I find it very absorbing as just as an occupation. I think the most challenging aspect of the production was keeping everybody headed in the same direction while so many of us were working long distance. Bill Burback was up in Portland, Greg is here in the Midwest, my team in Eugene, keeping us all focused and moving forward and also getting things built in a reasonable timeline. We have something like 58 masks in this show, wolf masks, monkey masks, Baloo, Bagheera. We have the Brahmin cattle. There were 10 masks from that, and then on top of that they wear little jackets that also have masks extended out from the jacket. So when the Brahmin are on stage chasing Shere Khan in the final scene, it looks like a herd of 40 cattle are on stage. Hopefully it doesn't sound like that. Building all of these, finding out the technical problems of dealing with them, and then fixing them before you get on stage well in advance. Those are the challenges that are just the natural technical challenges that everyone faces in a production like this. Well, first let me say that I'm really delighted to be here and working for Oklahoma City Ballet and having the opportunity to stage Mowgli on this ballet company. This is the first time I've ever been to Oklahoma City, so I'm having a great time. When I first created this, I've worked with my dancers for a very long time. Many of them I had been working with for 5, 6, 10 years. So they know me very well. They can almost predict what I'm going to choreograph, or in what style or in what way it's probably going to progress. So they were a great inspiration to work with. Restaging it is always a little scary, because in a ballet like this, the main characters, Mowgli, Baloo, and Bagheera, and the Monkey King and Queen are very, very important characters, especially Mowgli, because he is on from pretty much the beginning of the ballet all the way through to the end, and he basically carries the show. So to find the right dancer for Mowgli is extremely important. And I have to say, I'm really delighted with Huey. I think he's going to be absolutely wonderful.